everybody, welcome back to episode 6 of The Drop. Now, The Drop, as you know, is a segment from Off the Hiring Record where we cover anonymous confessions, thoughts, stories, and questions from recruiters, hiring managers, and candidates. And to be honest, I always say it's for everybody, everyday people just like you and myself. I always have to say this as well. This is a 100% anonymous platform where there is zero judgment, especially on the platform as well as in this podcast as well. We really don't care what your background is, what your industry is. We just want to create a safe space for everyone who shares their thoughts and their questions. But enough about me. I have one of my favorite people, one of my friends, 𝗵𝗶𝗿 Iyer, who is here as a guest on the pod today. 𝗵𝗶𝗿, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Denise. It's really exciting.
I know, finally we got you on, right?
I
like
know.
After two and a half years. 𝗵𝗶𝗿, quick intro. You've been in the HR scene for donkey's years now, almost.
Yeah.
Tell us, very quickly.
We don't talk about our age, and we don't talk about how many years.
We listen and we don't judge.
Yeah. No, I've been in TA, across TA basically, and HR for quite a few years. More recently, probably in the last 5 to 7 years, working across startups, helping them basically build out their people functions from the ground up, which is exciting. It's a lot of build, a lot of putting in the processes, frameworks, tech that's needed as startups scale, and looking at how we can bring in more people and help with that growth, basically.
And you might have forgotten to mention that you also do a bit of speaking every now and then. You've flown overseas for that too?
Yes, for a few different things. I forget sometimes. I know you know more about me than I do.
Also.
Yeah. So yeah, I have spoken at a few different conferences, but then also a couple of overseas ones, mainly based on finding talent across APAC or talking about the landscape of tech across APAC and all the different regions and how they're basically evolving over the last few decades.
Yeah. Well, we're very blessed to have you part of our community. I mean, we run in the same circle, so we tend to have a lot of, conversations about different things that's happening within our community in general. But let's talk about The Drop, right? As you know, with the format, what we typically do is we'll banter around some of the confession stories or thought that someone has shared. We don't know who they are. And then there's going to be 2 questions that we're going to tackle. Buckle up and we're going to get straight into it. So the first thing that I'm actually going to start with actually is a question. So we'll go question, thought, and then another question. So people who have talent acquisition friends, are you really friends with them? I think this is such an important question to ask right now.
Talent acquisition as in like internal versus agency, because this comes up a fair bit, right?
You can take any angle you want, 𝗵𝗶𝗿. We'll go with that.
I think it's pretty straightforward. Like, we're friends. We met through the industry as well. Like, I remember the first time I went to a meetup and I didn't know anyone in the recruitment industry. I actually came from a medicinal chemistry kind of background, so this was all new when I entered it. I didn't know anyone, didn't have any sort of friends in there to share pain points and challenges, and I think that's where we met as well. So yeah, I 100% think there are quite a few people who are friends with other people in the TA industry. I've got some of my closest friends that came out of this space, and we've been friends for over 8-10 years now. So yeah,
I was actually reading this question when it first, because I have to curate everything in the back end, and it kind of made me think, like, was this person coming from the angle of, because it does say question from recruiter, do they mean like work people that they work with, or like community as in TA community itself? Because then you kind of break that down, because I sometimes have a slightly different mindset when it comes to work people. Like, yeah, you work with your people, you end up being friends with some you don't get along, and that's okay. But, I agree with you. Like, when we look at our Melbourne community here, like what Matt, Woodard, Steph and all, everybody's doing, we've made so many friends from there. Like, shout out to Table 12 and the ITAS. Thanks to ITAS, we have a Table 12 now. But there's definitely room to be friends. And why would you not be friends with people that are similar minded, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, is we became friends because we had shared experiences. We might not have worked together, or even when you work with people, it's the same as you building up any sort of friendship in the world, right? Whether it's work, it's outside of work, you become friends with somebody or you hang out with someone and spend time with them because you like them as a person. It has nothing to do with their job. It has nothing to do with what they're doing. If you like them genuinely as a person, you're going to become friends with them. And I feel like that's the same for any sort of TA community, whether they're in agency, whether they're in internal roles. I don't think it makes that much of a difference in what you're doing as a job.
Yeah.
But yeah, I basically look at it as, if you're a good human being, you're going to make friends with other good human beings.
I love that. I think that is the crux of anything, is just being a basic good human being is probably the basic that you can start with, right? So there we go. All right. I love that, Bobby. Let's get into a thought and confession. I love this one as well. I love the fact that everybody puts emojis, like you can select.
I liked the emojis. I did look at it and I was like, oh, this one's got like so much fire emojis against it.
There's some really, really interesting ones on there that probably we'll tackle at some other time. But I'm going to read this out to you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well, being from in PNC. So this person says they've marked themselves as a candidate. They've said that I was a hiring manager, and in 10 years of hiring and managing people, I don't think it is fair to say that hiring or recruitment is broken. It can be skewed. There is room to do better. What breaks anything related to people, including hiring, are our biases. That's where the disconnect is. I've caught myself in it, leaning more towards a candidate because they reminded me of someone I already trusted, dismissing someone early because their style or communication was different. What assumptions are we working with? Check yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm surprised that someone has very eloquently put what everyone else, it happens. It happens to everybody. It happens to us. We're in interviews and you instantly click with people and you might not click with other people straight away. But I think the biggest one, and which is really, really eye-opening, is the self-awareness. Like if you go into those interviews and you know that you're going to have a bias to it, the first step is always you have the self-awareness, you know what's going to happen. You can very quickly change that around before you even step into an interview. But if you don't have the self-awareness, it's really hard to kind of see that for yourself unless someone else points it out. But yeah, I definitely think everybody has biases in life, just in life in general, not even in interviews, just life in general.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you know, what really stood out for me was this person marked themselves as a candidate, but they were also a hiring manager. So I'm assuming that they've obviously been in both seats. So they've seen the biasness that can creep in as a hiring manager, but also from a candidate perspective. But you're right, even in recruitment, right? Unconscious bias and conscious bias. Sometimes I feel like we are very well of the biases that are there. We just mask it with a bit of the nice bullshit, to be honest.
100%. It's always there, but we, even from a PNC lens, we run unbiased, unconscious training, you know, all of these trainings that run through to prevent this. But at the core of it is, if you understand where you're coming from, if you can pick up on it, or if you've got someone else in the interview that can give you feedback afterwards and say, oh, hey, Denise, I noticed you asked a few of these questions and you kind of just assumed XYZ about the person. That in itself is more useful than walking around without any idea what you've said or how you've shown up. And I guess that goes both ways, because candidates are the same. They come in with preconceived notions about the role or the managers or what they've read or seen online, which is the whole point of it, is that conversation, right? The conversation that you have within that room makes all the difference of what you walk out with.
Yeah. They said at the end, what assumptions are we walking in with? Check yourself. Check yourself. Right? That is so important. How do you think, from a PNC perspective, can people or hiring managers be checking themselves?
I think the biggest one that they've pointed out is noticing what you're actually taking in with. Like, are you going in with a preconceived notion of this candidate before they even interview? Have you judged them based on their CV? Have you judged them based on... I try and get managers not to talk to each other before an interview, because a lot of these biases usually come from that. And I say, whoever's done the interview previously, get them to give you a, hey, we didn't cover XYZ, we want you to cover this. but don't ask them for any more. Don't ask them for any more feedback or insights into the candidate, because then it's the previous interviewer's biases that are then going to be influencing how you turn up. So I try to keep that conversation separate and go, let's do the debriefs afterwards, but don't have a debrief with the person before or with other people before you put your own feedback in. And same with straight after an interview, I get them to go in and go, give your feedback. So it's unbiased. It's you giving your feedback about this candidate. Then we can sit down and have a discussion and see what comes up, because you get into the groupthink mentality. As soon as you start discussing it, you then have a group think, and you lose your voice, you lose your actual decision-making process in that as well.
100%. And I've seen with debriefs, what typically happens is when we used to do debriefs earlier on, I started to feel like I was this fly on this wall, just listening to everyone go back and forth. And people who were swaying more towards, I guess, all of a sudden they changed because someone said, oh, XYZ said this in an interview. And then that person was like, oh, yeah, I didn't remember that. Actually, now thinking about that, I think I'm swaying more towards a no. And then we just started to see it became too much, to the point where we were like, there's too much biasness creeping in because of this. And you're right, to your point, that people should avoid, talking to each other. But the reality is, I've seen it still happens, where they'll talk to each other and then put their feedback in, because they're kind of bouncing off each other to say, what is your perception of that person? But you're right, self-awareness is the first step, and to know what your barriers are, keep some barriers for yourself in terms of what is good, what is not good for yourself, in terms of progressing with that candidate or not.
Definitely. And those conversations need to happen anyway. It's probably just let's wait until everyone's interviewed, then have the debrief, as opposed to just having it multiple times along the way, which is where by the time you get to the last candidate, so many conversations have already happened. They've already made assumptions about themselves, about the other people. It just, tends to go haywire at that point.
Yeah. All right. Last question, 𝗵𝗶, and I think you'll probably enjoy this one. In a resume, what is your opinion on adding experience where it is only for under 6 months?
Under 6 months. Personally, I don't have any issues with it. I think if you explain what the circumstances are, because given this day and age, people are doing, side hustles outside of work. They're doing contracting, they're doing fractional work, they're doing consulting. So I don't think, if you'd asked me this question maybe 5 years ago, it was a whole different world. People weren't looking, even pre-COVID. Anything that was shorter than a year or 6 months was a red flag. I don't think that's the case anymore, as long as you're transparent. I think that's the biggest thing, is you're transparent about what you were doing in those 6 months. Is it applicable to the job that you're applying for? A lot of the time you're picking up skills, you're doing work, you're actually doing, it's not like you're not doing anything. So I never see a problem with putting something on there that's 6 months or less, as long as you can be transparent about it and genuine about, this is what I was during this time, and how does it apply to the jobs that you're applying for.
Yeah, I love that, and you're spot on. And I think COVID kind of really changed and shifted that mindset of, short tenures, or what have people been doing? Why have they been contracting? Well, that's just the nature of what the world became back then. And I always say to people, even if you've taken time off to look after a sick parent, or you're caring for a child, or you're a new mother, just put it on there. Nobody's going to penalize you. And if they are, then they're not the right organization to be working for. So
exactly. And with all these redundancies happening now, like there's no guarantee that you could be one of those people, or if it was a shorter contract, obviously the last people in are the first ones to be going in that sense. So I don't think that's seen as any more of a red flag nowadays than it was, pre-COVID.
Yeah, 100%. These lights, like they keep distracting me. How many times I've changed it? I need to change this anyways. Yeah, there we go. That's a lot better. My undiagnosed ADHD was like, where do I look? Do I look at 𝗵𝗶? Do I look at the lights? So my brain was like scattered.
We're just going party.
I love these. I have these lights in the other room next to the TV, plus over here as well, and it's pretty cool. Let me actually see if I can change them. So what happens is when I talk, it actually goes up like that. So it's pretty cool. So when you play music, it just lights up and it keeps going up like that. But anyways, 𝗵𝗶, that was it. I told you it was going to be short, sharp, simple, just your experience over here. So 𝗵𝗶, thank you so much. I know I'm going to be seeing you around the tracks anyways. So Thank you so much, everyone. This is going to be live next week. So yeah, thanks, Bobby. Thanks for joining.
No worries. Thanks, Denise.
Thanks.